Namaskar, good evening. Welcome to all of you to our online satsang this evening on Expand Your Sympathies. Let's just take a moment and close our eyes, feel the blessings of God and the great ones with us in this satsang this evening. Let's mentally call to them to bless us, to uplift us into their consciousness, their light, their joy. Feel their blessings coming, being showered upon you now. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It's wonderful to join you this evening. This is such a wonderful topic on how to go beyond the limits of who and what we think we are, to embracing others around us, to being able to be of service and to be able to be of help, to open our hearts to the compassion and the love of God and feel that flowing out to others. I thought I would share a couple of books with you tonight that I have read that show great souls who have expanded their sympathies. This, of course, is Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yoganandaji. If you haven't read it, please do. And all throughout the book, there are many wonderful stories of the great masters and their compassion and their love for many people and how they help them. And some others, just in general. This is a wonderful book on the life of the Dalai Lama, who also gave his life for humanity, to be able, giving his life to be able to serve others and help them. And then I have this book on Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and of course she became a nun and she served people in Calcutta and helped the poorest of the poor, opening herself to be a channel of light and blessings to them. This is a book that's going to be coming out soon in India on the life of Swami Kriyanandaji, and he served his guru's work for over 60 years, helping people in the path of Kriya Yoga and in their daily lives. And I brought one other book. There's just a very interesting one. I'm reading this presently, Little Princess, and it's by Conor Grennan. And it's a very interesting story of a man who he saved dozens of children from child trafficking in Nepal. He found the children and then he found their families. He risked his life to be able to help them and to bring their families back together. It's a very beautiful book. I recommend it. They were living in harsh conditions and he was able to help them, risking his own life, putting his own life aside. And like the various great ones, I've mentioned some of the great masters. You think of Martin Luther King Jr., you think of Gandhiji, you think of the various souls who open themselves to the divine to be able to flow through them in sympathy and in compassion, to be able to better people's lives, to be able to share light and blessings with them. When I first came to Ananda, I left a very good, lucrative job and employment that I had, and I had gone to a very good school, University of California at Berkeley, but I felt in my heart there was something missing. When I read Autobiography of a Yogi, I read those words, I went through the pages, I saw the pictures of the saints and the masters, and I could feel that it was my own dharma, my own karma, my destiny to help this guru's work. I just felt everyone should be practicing what he's talking about. And so I left my job and I moved into the Ananda House in San Francisco. We had Ananda House then. And I went to making $35 a month from, I don't know, a large salary before. And the first house I lived in with Ananda, I remember I lived in this tiny room and my head was just up against the door and floor. I didn't have any furniture. But I was so happy because I was giving myself, giving of myself, and that was the beginning of my giving of my life to God and to my guru. And so I served in America for several years. I served in Italy and traveled around Europe because I just felt in my heart I couldn't hold it, the teachings of Yoganandaji, just for myself. I wanted to share them. I went to 3 different African countries. I lived in an African village for a short time. I went to, that's in Nigeria, I went to Zimbabwe, I went to South Africa when apartheid was just ending. I spent some time in Australia with Yoganandaji's teachings, and I think I said going around Europe, and now I'm in India. But this is just nothing at all compared to the openness, the energy, the magnetism that the great ones have shed upon all of our lives. But I said that story so that people realize that unless we help others, that help won't be available to people. We have to give back what we have gained. And Paramahansa Yoganandaji, when he came to his guru Swami Sri Teswarji, he said, I don't want to help other people because the person, nobody likes the leader. Either, there's always something wrong, and I'd rather just go up to the Himalayas by myself. And his guru said, well, where would you be without the great ones having given their lives and their time and energy to helping you? And Yoganandaji understood then, and he said, okay, I understand. I want to dedicate myself to helping other people. And he came up with this beautiful prayer that you probably all have heard. May thy love shine forever, speaking of Divine Mother, may thy love shine forever upon the sanctuary of my devotion, and may I be able to share thy love with all hearts. And I think this is the prayer of the devotee, that yes, as Swami Kriyanandaji, when he came to, when he read Autobiography of a Yogi, and he went across the country from East Coast to West in the United States, he said he had 2 different desires in his heart, strong ones. And one was that he find God, and second was that he could share with other people. And Yoganandaji would often say very beautifully that it's God sharing with God, God serving God. And as we allow that flow to happen, then many people can be helped. The great masters come again and again to help humanity. Paramahansa Yoganandaji said that he would come 1,000,000 times as long, with bleeding feet, as long as one stray brother was left by the wayside and needing help. And these masters come to bring the light of God, a new life for us, a way to live in harmony with God. And you think of the beautiful life of the Buddha. When he was living in a fortress, he was a prince, he was to be king, he was living a protected life. His family tried to keep him away from anything that was disturbing, anything that was hurtful, anything that they didn't want him to see that was painful, that was sad, that was sorrowful. And then one day he left the kingdom and he went with one of his servants, and he went and he saw someone who was ill. And he asked the person who was with them, he said, I have never seen this before. Does this happen to everyone? And the servant said, yes, my lord, it happens to everyone. Everyone goes ill at some point. And he said, oh, that's terrible. And then he walked further and he saw someone who was old. And before that, they would always shelter him from seeing anyone who was aged. And he asked the person with him, he said, does this happen to everyone, that people grow old? And the man with him, he said, yes, my lord, it happens to everyone. And then he went further out, and he went out to the Ghats, and there was a crematory ground, and he saw the fires there for cremations. And he asked the servant, he said, does this happen to everyone? That people die and this happens? And his servant said, yes, my lord, it happens to everyone. And at that moment, he just decided, now I have to find the meaning of life. I have to know how I can help other people, how I can shed light on the meaning of why we're here and what life is all about. And he gave his life for that. He left the kingdom. He didn't want to be prince or king. And he went and meditated and renounced everything. And he gave his life to God. And same happened with St. Francis. He was very wealthy, his family, and he said, I don't want that. St. Francis of Assisi in Italy, he said, I don't want that life. I want a life where I can share God's light and joy with all. And there's a beautiful story that Swami Kriyanandaji would often tell. And it was about 3 men who were walking, and they saw this high wall, and they wondered, now what's on the other side of that wall? And well, they said, okay, well, let's just see. So they each helped one to get up and get over to the other side of the wall, or up to see what was over there. And the man goes up and he says, oh my, and he jumps over, and he never comes back. And they wondered, now is he coming back? He never returned. So the other 2 said, well, I wonder what's over there. Let's see what's there. And so one helps the other to get up, and he comes up to the top, and he looks over, and he too jumps over, and he says, he doesn't come back either. And the one said, what happened to them? So he somehow gets himself up to the top, and he looks over, and he sees beautiful, beautiful, heavenly gardens and trees and flowers and just lovely area, and pools and water and springs and fountains and waterfalls, and he, symbolic of the astral realm, symbolic of our life in God. And he looked there, and he wanted to go, but he said, no, I will wait. I want to tell everybody else what I have seen there. And so he doesn't jump over. He comes back, and he goes and he spreads the word to everyone. And that's such a beautiful way to live your life, that in your heart, whatever you've received, you want to share it with others. You can't help but share it with others. It's coming out of your eyes. It's coming from your voice. It's coming from your vibrations. And this is the way of yoga, that we receive, yes, but we complete the circle by giving in whatever way we can to others. And there are some inspiring stories of Paramahansa Yoganandaji's life, thinking of expanding one's sympathies. And he would actually walk up and down in Los Angeles in front of the bars, where people were drinking, because he just was spreading his vibration of upliftment. So people would drop that habit. He was spreading God's vibrations. He was spreading light. He was spreading joy. And he did that as a practice at different times. And there is another very sweet story of a man who was inebriated, who came to Yoganandaji, and Master had the long hair, and this man came up, and he was drunk, and he looks at him. He says, well, hello, Jesus Christ, and Master said just hello, and so then Yoganandaji just looks at him with deep compassion and deep love, but with deep power. And the man says, hey, what you been drinking? Because he could feel this Shakti that came from Yoganandaji. And Master just looked at him with so much compassion, and he says, it's got a lot of kick in it. And what he gave him was from himself. He gave him the power of God, and he left the man sobered. And Master, he could feel the vibrations all around, and what was the need for people. And one time he was driving in a car, and he had the driver stop the car. I think it must have been in Los Angeles. And he said, stop the car, stop the car. And the driver, you know, they were out in front of a shop, and the driver didn't know, I mean, what does he want? So Yoganandaji gets out and he goes into the store, and it was closing time, and he goes around and he just takes various things, and the man with him kept thinking, what does he want with all this? He called it junk. He says, what does he want with these pieces of junk? And Master kept picking up, he picked up, and then he goes to the counter, and the lady rings up everything, the owner, and then she burst into tears, and she said, I just very badly needed this amount of money today. My child's in the hospital, I have to pay my rent. And she said, God himself must have sent you. Now, only if you're open and a channel for the divine. I mean, he knew everyone's thoughts, and, you know, and could feel people's needs, and he responded to those needs. And it's a wonderful example for us to be as open as possible, to feel what are the needs, how can I be a channel for light, and also in giving vibrations to people. Master would he would just beam his energy and light into people. There was a man who was, his name was Orville Anders, and he didn't believe in, you know, yoga, and he didn't think it did anything. But one day he got interested, and Yoganandaji took the man and he brought his head. The man came for an interview. Master took his head and he brought his eyes right to his eyes, and he just beamed energy and light into the man, and they never talked at all at the interview. And the man stumbled out of the room, and people said, well, what happened? He said, I don't know. And from that moment, he was completely changed. He became a disciple, and he went to God's vibrations to change him. And so also just through the vibrations, I remember Swami Kriyanandaji told a couple of us once a few years back, he said, it's not enough to give a talk. You have to give vibrations, give energy, give God's love, give light as you speak, and not just think, oh, these are the words I should say, it's all from my brain. No, it's from your whole being, that your aura should fill the room, and the vibration should go out to everyone. And that's how Master spoke. He spoke in the largest crowds around America, 3,000, 5,000. He would run out onto the platform with his hair streaming back, and he was just so magnetic and just completely enthused and uplifted. And he would rush out, and he would ask people, how feels everybody? And people would say, awake and ready. He taught them to say that. And how is everybody? Awake and ready. And so then he would just, his energy would just go to the back of the hall, and people were healed. He had people chanting. He had a harmonium, and people said, don't chant harmonium in America. People don't know what a harmonium is and what these chants are. He said, I don't care. He would chant. He had people doing affirmations. He had people doing energization and exercises and pranayama and all kinds of things, healing techniques. But more than anything, what he was doing was giving them God's love through his own sensitivity, through his own attunement with God. Through the love and compassion he had, he was always just sending out to everybody in the room. And some people could see, they could remove their glasses and never have to use glasses again. There were other people who were healed who were lame. There were many incidents where Master was able to heal people in the audience, and various people who came to him, Swamiji said, just sitting in his presence, you just felt completely uplifted. He said, at one time I felt my whole head was opening up. And he wasn't blessing me particularly. I mean, he was, because I was in his presence. But I was just sitting there. He was talking about filling potholes. He was talking about different jobs around the ashram. And I sat there, and my energy completely lifted up. And this is because he was full of God's vibrations of joy, of light, power, of Shakti, and anyone around his vicinity was able to be uplifted either by the touch or by his vibrations. And then through healing, there was a story of one man who was on his deathbed, and Yogananda ji heard about it. I think it was Dr. Lewis who called him, or one of the disciples, and said that this was their friend and could Master help. And he said, I only help if God tells me to. And so he felt inwardly that the divine had given him the go-ahead to help, to serve in this way. So he said he was in a room and he prayed for the person, and he thought about them and sent vibrations to them and sent God's power. And he said it felt like a burst, like a bomb blast from him. An explosion came out of him and went to the person. And the person sat up immediately, and the nurse said they heard like an explosion in the room, and they saw a flashing light, and the person was completely healed. Now, this is sharing vibrations. I mean, we have to work up to that. But Paramahansa Yogananda and the great masters, I mean, you've heard many stories where people were raised from the dead, from the touch, with Jesus Christ raised Lazarus from the dead with just his voice saying, Lazarus, come forth. Just that vibration. And if you read the stories of the masters and saints, you see all along, because they had the power of God flowing through them, and they were there to help people through their capacity and as one who is a channel for God, that people were able to be healed from their voice, from their touch, from their vibration. There was Dr. Lewis's daughter. Dr. Lewis was a very close disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda ji, and his daughter had epilepsy, and she had those attacks at various times. And Dr. Lewis asked Master, he said, can you help her? She's having an attack right now. And Yogananda ji said, yes, just wait. So he stepped behind a partition. This is the way Dr. Lewis told the story, a screen, and for a few minutes. And then he came out of there and he said, she's well now, and that will never happen again. And she never had another attack. And this is, it just shows you how wonderful it is when the masters come for healing on all levels, body, mind, and spirit. And they come again and again from the call of humanity. And when people were wrong even, Master was able to help them. There's a wonderful story from his life where he would speak, as I said, in front of many thousands of people. And people weren't always happy. I mean, he spoke against people as well. And so one time he was, after a lecture, people said, don't go home alone. You should, have company. And Master said, I'm not afraid. So he walked home, and it was a dark street, and 3 gunmen were behind him. And one had his gun in his back. And Master turned around, and you would think that, now why would he start talking in this way when he's about to be shot? But he turns around and he says, why do you live the way you do? You're not happy living like this. Stop living like this. And they started shaking. I mean, they could feel the power flowing through him. And they said, what are you doing to us? What are you doing to us? And then they dropped their guns and they ran away. And they were completely changed. And another man came to his lecture, one of his lectures in his room where he was afterwards, and he came and he had a pistol, a gun, and he came and he threw it on the desk, and he said, I came here to kill you, but I can't do it. And what was happening was there was so much a wave of energy and light flowing from the Master that he just couldn't do it. He couldn't lead that life anymore. And the story of St. Francis's life, St. Francis of Assisi, I spoke of him a moment ago. And there were some robbers that came to the monastery, and they took whatever they wanted. St. Francis was away at the time, but they took things and then they ran off. And when St. Francis came back, they said, the monk said, told him what happened. And he said, well, where are those people? And they said, we just kicked them out. We don't know. I mean, we didn't go after them. And he said, you go right now and you find them. And you bring them back here. And they found them and they brought them back. And St. Francis talked with them. He somehow worked with them so much that they became a part of the monastery. They became monks under him. And such was the love and the grace and the blessings that they felt from him. They changed their lives. And I told this story at the Sunday satsang, but it's a beautiful story of Valmiki. And you know, he was a highway robber. And at one point he was robbing some saintly people. And they said, this isn't a good way to live. Why are you living like this? And he said, I have to feed my family. I don't have any other means. And they said, do you think your family wants to accrue the bad karma you're getting from this kind of living? And he said, of course they do. And they said, we don't think so. You go and ask your family if they want the bad karma that you're accruing from stealing from people. And if they say no, would you follow us? And he said, all right, if they say no, but I'm sure they won't say no. But if they say no, I'll follow you. So he goes back and he asks his family. He says, I'm stealing for the family, and I just want to know if you bear the bad karma with me. And they said, absolutely not. We don't want your bad karma. The way you provide is up to you, but that's your own bad karma. So he leaves them, and he goes back to the saints, and he tells them what happened. And they said, okay, great, you're with us now. And they said, well, what you have to do, you chant the name, your sadhanas, chant the name of Rama. And he said, oh, I can't do that. That's such a holy name. I can't chant the name of Rama. And they said, well, just try. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So they said, okay, well, if you can't chant Rama, why don't you chant Mara? And they said, try Mara. And so he said, oh, okay, Mara's good. So he chants Mara, 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 Rama. And it goes into Rama, of course. And of course he becomes a saint through that chanting. But he was a robber. And through the vibration, through the changing of the people, those saintly people who were with him, he became a saint. And so that shows how whatever is happening in our lives, if we keep in tune, if we keep serving, if we keep chanting, if we keep studying, if we keep doing all the things that we know are uplifting us, then we can change as well. So for us, what we want to do, it's a beautiful thing. Master said, you can't win God's love until you've learned to win the love of others. And so in us as yogis, we have to learn how to expand ourselves beyond the little self. This is who I am. This is my home. This is my family. This is my job. This is my money. This is my car. And everybody else, it's up to them what happens to them. No, our energy has to go outward to be able to open up as a channel for light, for energy, for joy. A good teacher is expansive. They feel. And even, you know, as I'm looking here in the video cameras, it's like there's only one person in the room, and that's Monica, bless her heart, because she's doing the filming tonight. But I can feel everybody. You feel that the energy and these teachings are going out, and they go out to many, many souls. And also a person who is teaching can sense what the questions are. You can sense what the energy is in the room. Swamiji was excellent at that. You didn't even have to raise your hand with the question. He would know what people's questions were, because he was so expansive. He was so open. He could receive the questions, the vibration, what the people's needs were. I would say in all the years I've been with Ananda, which is about 36, the time that I spent with Swami Kriyananda in counseling, which you say, or him telling me, sitting me down and saying, Dhyana, this is what you need to do, I would say that equals probably less than 45 minutes in all these years. And when I add up 5 minutes there, 2 minutes there, 1 minute there, it just wasn't his way. His way was to just fill you with God. And then you were uplifted and give you practices, that things you could do where you were so busy. You kept your, you kept your energy moving. And that's the way that Master was as well. He never really did so much with talking and counseling. It was just to uplift people's vibrations. And here in India, I've been in many situations where I was, people always ask me, as you can imagine, well, where are you from? Well, how did you get here? Well, what are you doing here? And it's wonderful. I love that because it leads me into Master's teachings and who he was, and autobiography of a yogi, and various things like that. But in the very beginning, in America, people are very gregarious. People are friendly right off. We say hello. As soon as you see somebody on the street or on the bus or wherever, so hello, how are you? And in the stores. And so I came here, and everywhere I went, oh, hello, hello, and hello. And I would go for walks, hello, how are you? And in the beginning, nobody ever really talked to me. And I thought, that's strange. Why didn't they say hello? But I just kept going. I said, I'm not going to change, And then, I think people started feeling that it was so sincere, and I don't look like a criminal or anybody who's going to rob them or something. And so I think they just started relaxing. And there's a very interesting story of a man he's at a park nearby where I walk every day, and he's an elderly man, and I've been walking there for years, really, but I haven't seen him. I saw him maybe for a year. And every time I'd go in the park, I'd walk for an hour or whatever, and I'd say, oh, he's the gardener and maintenance person there, and I'd go, oh, hello, and nothing. He'd never say anything. He never even looked at me, and so I just, well, I don't know what's wrong with him, so I just kept going, and then a little while back, in fact, this winter, it got, it's pretty cold here, as you can see. I'm in a woolen sweater, but I was going to the park, and it was freezing, so I saw the man there, and he had he had some other men, and he must be in his 70s, and he had this little shawl on, and he's just over the fire, and no gloves, and I had these gloves that I was about to give to somebody else. I had several pairs of gloves, and then I just kept giving them. But anyway, I saw him over there, and I just went over. And I just felt, why not? I went over, I said, oh, how are you? And, and I said, oh, it's cold today. Aaj tanda hota hai. And I said, you don't have any gloves? And he said, no. And I just took mine off. And I said, here, why don't you? No. And I said, no. I said, no, I have some other gloves. And anyway, I just said, please take them. So he took them. Now, what's interesting is that ever since then, he's been like my best friend at the park. So anytime I go to the park, hello, ma'am, namaste, and then there are monkeys. There you got all the monkeys out. Come on, madam, and it's just, I just never stopped. I was just friendly, and I remained friendly. And if people liked me, if they didn't, I didn't care. And anyway, that's the spirit of yoga, is uniting. Just opening and being united with people and your soul and your heart. And here in India, I can tell you, I've been able to teach meditation just about everywhere I've gone, because people always ask, who are you and where are you from? So in a hotel lobby, in a restaurant, in a spa, salon, in so many places, at the swimming pool, have been able to teach people how to meditate. And one of the, because people come up and when I say, meditation, they say, oh, I want to learn. I said, well, sure, let's do it. And, but it must be because there's an aura of just service and wanting to help. And I think the most wonderful time for me with that was when I was just coming from a Kriya initiation, and I was in Mumbai, I think it was, yes, me and Jaya and another lady, Ramani. And we were coming through, it was the old Mumbai airport. We had just finished, you know, it was like, we were so blissful. We were just coming back to Delhi, so we were going through the airport. And I was going through security, and the lady was there to check me, and she said, so I went in this little cubicle with her, and she had this, you know, wand to check me, and so I just felt so happy. And so I came in and I said, hello, how are you? And she says, oh, I'm fine. And she said, no, who are you? And what are you doing here? So I explained to her, and I said, we've just come from an advanced meditation initiation. And she said, oh, I've really been wanting to learn meditation. And I said, oh, great. And so I just kept, you know, going. And she says, I really want to learn. I said, oh, wonderful. And she says, can you teach me? And I said, okay. She said, I said, now? And she said, yes, please, now. So the curtain was closed there, and there was a line of people out there, but she didn't care. So I said, okay, close your eyes, look up at the spiritual eye, this point right here. It was maybe 1 minute. I just guided her into Hong Sa technique. Then I gave her my card, our website, and everything. When she opened her eyes, she just, oh, that was just so wonderful. And so then, you know, I helped her as best as I could. And then I left. Now, the interesting part of this story was about 3 months later, we were going again to Mumbai to another program, and it was just me and Jayaji at this time. And we came through the airport, and we went through security. It was a new airport by then, and or the new wing. And so we were over there in the new area, and Jaya had his computer out, and I was doing whatever, reading a book, and someone comes behind me. I mean, it's completely mobbed in there. And the person says, hello, ma'am. And I said, me? I said, ma'am. And I said, me. And there was someone had on an officer's, an official dress. And I said, I thought, have I done something wrong? And then it was this lady, and she said, don't you remember me? And I said, well, not really. She said, you taught me how to meditate in the other wing of the airport. I said, oh my gosh, are you still meditating? And she says, yes, I really wanted to find you. And I want to know, what do I do next? I'm ready for part 2. How did she find me? Just tell me that. And amongst all those thousands of people, and I wasn't even in the same area again. And, but it was meant to be, because there was an energy of service. She had received something, she wanted more. Anyway, I said to Jai, do you have the meditation book? And he said, yeah. He pulled it out of his briefcase, we gave it to her. I haven't seen her since, but she came. These are some beautiful stories of just opening yourself to what the divine wants to do. And as we think about how we can serve, of course we can serve through healing prayers. After you meditate, rub your hands together, think of anyone you know, send them Om through chanting Om. That's Master Yoganandaji's technique. And speaking of meditation, as you meditate, don't meditate just for yourself. Well, I'm getting, you know, and I'm doing better and better every day. The meditation should just go out and bless the whole house, your whole family, your neighborhood. When you leave to go to work, there's still blessings of your meditation flowing through you. There's blessing the traffic. You know, the traffic's pretty bad. But you can open the doorways to the light and peace and energy you have experienced, and give that to others. When Rajarsi Janakananda would meditate in Encinitas out on the lawn, and Yoganandaji would walk by, maybe with somebody else, he would say, let's go quiet here, because we don't know what blessings are flowing from one who meditates so deeply. And I know when we come out of like the Kriya ceremonies, it's just the whole neighborhood is just filled with light. And, you know, after kirtan or an all-night meditation, Shivaratri is coming up, you just feel the whole neighborhood, or after a fire ceremony and chanting the mantras like we did at the start of the year 108 times, you just feel the reverberation of those vibrations. They're helping everyone. These are always, we all can help. It is said that when Buddha received enlightenment, just at that moment, the energy just went so far to touch so many people, and that someone who had been weeping, suddenly they felt joyful and peaceful. Maybe a couple who had been in a disagreement, they began to find peace between themselves. And we don't know what our energies, they either helping or they're drawing the energy down. And so as we go on our path, we should feel everything we're doing, we're sharing it with others. And in our seva, I just posted on my Facebook page, Nayaswami Dhyana, if you'd like to get on. We have a Yogananda Charitable Trust now by Master's Grace, and we're able to help an orphanage here nearby in Gurgaon and sponsor 30 children who are going to school at an underprivileged school up in Rishikesh. And now we went from 1,500 to 5,000 widows in Brindaban that the Yogananda Charitable Trust is completely supporting. And this is how our life should be. How else can I help? How else can I give to help other people, to spread the light, not just in money, but, you know, some of us will be going there regularly to help at the school, or to help with the widows and to be with them. Find some way that you come out of yourself. Every person will have a way that they serve, that they give, but find some way, and you'll find that your own life just becomes wonderful. Things run more smoothly, your difficulties are ironed out or dissolved or get smaller. I remember a time when I was going through a difficult time, and I was going from, Swamiji was here in India, I was just sort of arriving, and I was serving so many hours, and I would go between his house and B10 by 8, the ashram, and just going back and forth, just doing whatever I could. And I remember one time I was just so exhausted, and I just thought, I have so much to think about, but I don't have any time. And it was the best medicine. I didn't have any time to think about myself, to think about my own problems as I was serving and as I was helping other people. And finally, Lahiri Mahashaya, his guru Babaji taught him a beautiful lesson. It was at a Kumbh Mela, and Lahiri Mahashaya suddenly saw Babaji down on the ground, washing the feet of a sadhu who had matted hair and was unkept and unclean. And he sees his guru, Babaji, down there washing his feet. And he says, Guruji, how is it that you are here? And he says, I am washing the feet of this sadhu, and then I'm going to clean his eating utensils. And he wanted to show him. He said, I'm learning the greatest of all qualities, best of all in God's eyes, and that's humility. And humility goes along with giving, of serving, of giving oneself, of compassion, of serving in whatever way that you can. I recall when Swamiji was his last months here in his body. Many of us, many of you probably too, saw him. He could barely walk. He had to have help standing. He could barely sing, but he kept serving, and he served to the end. And I think that's a wonderful example for all of us. Keep that prayer in your heart and your mind. May thy love shine forever upon the sanctuary of my devotion, and may I be able to share thy love with all hearts. God bless you, and joy to you.